How's it going, guys? So today Rob has asked me to share my testimony, kind of like what the other volunteers have been doing for the previous weeks. And so I just want to start my testimony off kind of at the beginning. It's actually before I can even remember. So before I can remember, my parents they got a divorce when I was around 2 years old when it happened. And so I mean, obviously I can't remember it, but I was never able to really see my parents eat at the same table, or to really be together, or to love one another. But sometimes I consider that kind of a blessing and a curse, that I never had to experience the fighting or anything like that. But again, I was never able to see them together, to see them love one another. But my mom did end up remarrying to a man named Brian. And Brian is my stepdad, and he's someone that I grew up with, and so I consider him to be just as much a parent as my mom or my real dad. He's always been there for me, and so he's a parent just like my mom or dad. As early as I can remember, I was always moving back and forth from house to house with my mom and my dad. I never really got too sick of having to move around, just because I knew that they loved me and I loved them, and it just never got too old to be able to be around them and to see them. Both my mom and my dad took my siblings to church just about every Sunday, but there was no real discipleship at home, is how I would explain it. They didn't care if I was reading my Bible, or if I was having a time of prayer every day, but they did make it a priority to get me to Sunday church. My grandmother, however, was someone in my life who really was involved in my faith, and who she always tried to disciple us boys the best she could, disciple a bunch of kids. But it's when I got to middle school is really when I started to have my first experiences with youth group. At my dad's church, I started going to a youth group that I actually really enjoyed it. My youth pastor's his name was David, and he always had really cool things for us to do, like Nerf nights, or he would invite us to his house and we would watch Marvel movies or Disney movies, something like that. It was just a blast. And during the summers, he would take us to a place called Camp Joshua. And this is in kind of the special moments in my life, because it didn't happen very often, but these were the moments that I would really be able to discover who God was in a unique way, because I was detached from my normal life, from from school and from my parents, and just from my regular group of friends. This was a time that I could really sit and focus on what God was trying to tell me. And it wasn't until my sophomore year of high school that I really had to make any sort of decision for my own faith, because I'd just kind of been dependent on the people in my family, their faith, my grandma especially, her faith. And I just kind of considered that if I was going to church every Sunday, if I was doing my best to just to get to church every Sunday morning, then I'm doing fine, right? But it was during my second year of high school, my sophomore year, that my grandmother actually passed away. And I can honestly say that this was probably the most devastating moment in my entire life. She was really the person that would try to pour into me spiritually, and it was gone, right? And so I had to grow up in that moment. I had to make a choice about whether or not I wanted to drop this Christianity thing that was kind of starting to pick up in my life. I'm not even sure if that's really something you can drop, but it was something I had to make the choice of. Do I want to continue to make church a priority? Do I want to continue to keep going to youth group, because my grandma's gone, and she's really the only person that cared if I did it? So I had a choice about whether or not I wanted to continue to do that. But the other choice I had was to just try to grow up and to take my faith and to make it my own, and not to let my faith be dependent on any one person's. It was near this time that my church hired a new youth pastor. His name was Zach. And looking back at my life, I can clearly see how God was using Zach as an instrument for his purpose. I became close with Zach, and I started to become a leader in my own youth group. He would kind of do some of the similar things as David. He would invite people to his house, and he would have special gatherings at the church, and he just made youth group just a blast to be at, and I really enjoyed it. And so I started becoming a leader in this group, and it was just strange to me because it wasn't long ago that I was seriously considering whether or not I wanted this to continue being a real part of my life. By that, like, church is what I mean, is I didn't know if I wanted to continue being a part of a church, but I can honestly say that this is where my life turned around, is when I made that decision to want to know Jesus more. And it was during that time, during the rest of my time at high school, through all the drama and heartbreak and just normal stupid parts of high school, that God was working in me, through me. And the more time that I was able to be a leader in my youth group, the more time that passed while I was part of my youth group, the more natural it felt for me to be that leader in the youth group. And it felt right, and it was motivating me to want to continue doing this. And so during a CIY conference, I felt God put a call on my heart that week to go into full-time ministry, specifically as a youth pastor. And my motivation, my inspiration behind that was that I wanted to provide for other students what Zach and David had provided for me, because I know that God was working through them to get me to where I am today. And so that's kind of what I wanted to do for other students. I wanted to be like Zach or like David, to just anyone that I could be. And that's really where my motivation to do full-time ministry came from. And so to me, it seemed clear that the next step to reach this goal was to enroll at some sort of Bible college. And that choice actually came pretty easy, just because all the leaders at my church, they were graduates of Ozark Christian College, which is in Joplin. And so that's where I set my sights on. And that's where I ended up going. I didn't apply to other schools. I knew that I wanted to go to Ozark because I knew this is what I wanted to do. And so my senior year was actually really easy, and there wasn't much stress with all of applying to colleges and stuff. But so my college life was really normal. Just nothing out of the ordinary happened, nothing special. I'm sure there are some pretty crazy stories that I just can't remember. But yeah, everything was normal for the most part. But it was during my sophomore year of college where I was in a class where we were practicing doing baptisms. And it's kind of a weird thing to practice, but that's what we were doing. And so we had to go to a church that had a baptistry, and that was nearby the school. This led me to a church called Villa Heights. This is where, while I was at Villa Heights, I met this big dude named Rob Peterson, who was looking for an intern for his ministry. Truth be told, I really wasn't interested in any sort of internship at the moment, but one of my friends who was in class with me, he would not stop bugging me about the fact that I should really think about this internship, and I should really apply for this, because this could be a good opportunity. And I believe this is another moment in my life where God was using someone that was close to me to push me in the direction that he wanted me to go. And so, as you can probably guess, this is how I ended up at Villa Heights. And it's just been a blessing to be able to be at Villa, and to work with Rob and work with the other volunteers, and just to get to know all of you. And so before I end the video, there's just a couple things that I want to say. The first is that, looking back at my life, it's pretty clear to me now, and I can realize that through my life, God was speaking to me. And it wasn't through an audible voice or a miracle, kind of like he does for some people, or that you hear that some people say they hear an audible voice of God. And that's not something I've experienced, but looking back, I do know that I have heard God. And it is pretty clear to me that he was speaking through the people that were closest to me in my life, and he was speaking through the people who really had an investment in my faith and who really wanted to see me grow closer with Jesus. And so I believe that God was speaking to me and doing his will through those people to try to get to me. And the last thing that I want to say is that when I decided to take my faith to be my own and to take it seriously, which is when I started to try and become a leader in my youth group, that's when my life changed forever. And I can honestly say that it changed my life. And so I just want to encourage you guys with that, just that if you haven't made those steps to taking your faith to be your own, that I would encourage you to do that, to talk to one of the volunteers about it, because it changed my life, and I know God is going to do the same for you. And so thanks for listening, guys. I hope to see you all on Wednesday. We're doing another Google Hangout meet at 6:30, so I think we're going to be doing a activity, and then a time of prayer. And then this week we're changing it up a little bit, so we're actually going to be doing small groups separately. So your leader should get a hold of you to set up a time where, just any time this week, where you guys are going to get together and meet up. So stay safe, guys. Wash your hands. See you later.